844 words within target. Here's the script. In September 2014, in a hospital in Shandong Province, China, a 24-year-old woman complained of nausea, dizziness, and a lifetime of unsteady walking, and doctors still cannot fully account for how she had lived 24 years without a cerebellum. Not damaged, not shrunk, absent. A CT scan showed empty space where roughly 10% of her brain's neurons should have been, packed instead with cerebrospinal fluid in a cavity where a fist-sized structure should have sat. Her name has never been released. Her case has. Neurosurgeon Dr. Sheng Yunxia and her team at the Chinese People's Liberation Army General Hospital ran scan after scan, expecting equipment error. There was none. The woman was married. She had a daughter. She'd worked on a farm her entire life, done chores, walked to market, raised a child, all without the structure neuroscience calls the seat of motor coordination. Her only visible symptoms: slightly slurred speech, a wobble in her gait, tremors so mild her own family had written them off as clumsiness. You'd expect someone missing an entire brain structure to be catastrophically disabled. The cerebellum packs more neurons than the rest of the brain combined. Roughly 80% of your total neuron count lives in a structure the size of a fist, tucked beneath the occipital lobe at the base of your skull right now. Losing it should mean losing fine motor control, balance, speech coordination, possibly the ability to walk at all. It's the part of you firing constant microcorrections just to keep you upright while you read this sentence. She could walk, unassisted if unsteadily. She could talk if a little thickly. She'd carried a pregnancy to term and delivered without complication. For over 2 decades, nobody, not her family, not a single physician, had noticed that a structure holding 80% of her brain's neurons simply wasn't there. The obvious theory: her brain compensated. Neuroplasticity, doctors call it, other regions rewiring to take over lost function. It's documented in stroke patients, in children who lose a hemisphere young enough to adapt. Case closed, you'd think. The brain is flexible. It found a workaround, and the workaround held for 24 years. Except compensation on this scale had never been recorded. Every other documented case of cerebellar agenesis, and there were only 9 in the entire medical literature before hers, involved severe, often fatal impairment. Infants who never learned to sit up. Children who never spoke a full sentence and needed lifelong care. The cerebellum isn't just a balance organ. Recent research ties it to timing thought itself, to emotional regulation, to predicting the sensory consequences of your own movements before you make them. Losing it should scramble far more than gait. And here's what breaks the compensation theory outright. Neuroplasticity explains rewiring after damage. It doesn't explain a structure that appears to have never developed the connections in the first place, in a brain that somehow built alternate pathways for a function it should have learned in early childhood. The exact window when, in every prior fatal case, the absence was catastrophic and immediate, not quietly absorbed. So researchers turned to the deepest question in the case. Was she actually missing the cerebellum, or had it simply never signaled its own absence to the rest of her brain during development? If the cerebellum never existed, the surrounding cortex may have had no template to compensate for, no lost function to notice, because nothing was ever there to lose in the first place. That would mean her brain didn't repair a gap. It grew up treating the gap as normal, and quietly built a version of coordination and balance using circuitry that, in every other human being studied, is never asked to do that job. Nobody has mapped which regions took over or how, or why it worked in her and killed or disabled every one of the 9 prior documented cases. Geneticists floated a rare developmental mutation. Ruled out, her genetic panel came back unremarkable. Others suggested an undetected prenatal injury, a stroke in utero that simply erased the tissue after it formed. But agenesis and destruction leave different signatures on a scan, and hers matched agenesis. The structure never grew, rather than having been lost afterward. A third theory proposed a malformation during the 7th week of fetal development, the exact window when the cerebellum begins forming, and that theory was never confirmed either. No scan, no biopsy, no genetic marker has explained why her specific brain tolerated what 9 other documented cases did not survive intact. More than a decade later, her case remains one of the most cited anomalies in cerebellar research, referenced in papers that still can't answer the basic question it raised. Somewhere in your skull right now, a structure the size of a fist is running calculations you never consciously authorize, and medicine still doesn't fully understand what happens to a person, or to a mind, when it simply isn't there at all.